Yeah, so on that high note of culture, welcome to the Batman at 85 panel. We are celebrating the 85th anniversary of the world's most beloved billionaire. Batman debuted in Detective Comics 27, which came out on March 30th, 1939, cover dated May 1939, by a company called Detective Comics, which soon after merged with National Allied Publication and renamed DC. So for those of you who don't know, saying DC Comics, you're saying Detective Comics Comics. And now you know.
Is that like MLB baseball?
That's exactly the same. That's exactly the same. Batman was created by two young Jews from the Bronx, the South Bronx. Back then it was a predominantly Jewish neighborhood. 24-year-old artist Bob Kane, born Robert Kahn, and 25-year-old writer Bill Finger, born Milton Finger, who also created Green Lantern and a few other things. We're going to get to them later. According to legend, they developed the entirety of the character and his world over the course of a single weekend, walking around in Polo Park. And if you didn't know, 192nd East 192nd Street and Grand Concourse in the Bronx is named Bill Finger Way. And we'll get to that too. Yeah, that's absolutely a clapping moment. But aside from this parentage, a man who inherits an ancestral fortune, lives in a castle, and wears ascots doesn't really say Jewish, right? But the truth is that there's a surprising amount of Jewish history and themes in Batman's comics, as well as other media appearances. And we're here today to explore them with our illustrious Bat guests. And we'll start with Athena Finger. Athena Finger is the granddaughter of Bill Finger, co-creator of Batman. A Batman historian, she led the campaign that in 2015 finally won her grandfather the recognition he deserves as Batman's co-creator. Athena and her family's story is featured in the Hulu documentary Batman and Bill. It's available on Hulu. I highly recommend it. She is also co-presenter of the Bill Finger Award for Excellence in Comic Book Writing at the Will Eisner Award ceremony at San Diego Comic-Con. Athena is also an artist, upcoming author, and advocate for arts education. Next up is Jordan B. Gorfinkel, AKA Gorf. He has a bat yarmulke, if he will lean his head down or take it off.
I noticed that. Love it.
Gorf was the Batman group editor at DC, working under the legendary Denny O'Neil from 1991 to 1999. Among other lasting contributions to the Bat mythos, he originated the famous storyline No Man's Land and created Birds of Prey. Gorf is also the writer of the Passover Haggadah Graphic Novel and the Koren Tanakh graphic novel Esther, as well as the mind behind JewishCartoon.com. We should all check out. Danny Fingeroth. Danny's full biography would take up the whole panel, so I'll just stick to the highlights.
So let's do that. Okay.
Let's do that, okay. So welcome to the Danny at Not Quite 85 panel.
Thanks. Enough of the compliments here.
Danny is a longtime comic book writer and editor. In the 80s and 90s, he was the group editor of the Spider-Man books at Marvel Comics, a renowned, nay preeminent, pop culture historian and biographer. He is the author of Superman on the Couch, What Superheroes Really Tell Us About Ourselves and Our Society, Disguised as Clark Kent, Jews, Comics, and the Creation of the Superhero, The Rough Guide to Graphic Novels, A Marvelous Life, The Amazing Story of Stan Lee, which personally I think is the best Stan Lee biography written, and the recent Jack Ruby, The Many Faces of Oswald's Assassin. Danny was also the co-creator of Jewish Comic-Con in Brooklyn in 2017, together with Fabrice Sapolsky and Fred Polanecki.
2016, actually 2017 is the only year it was not. It was in 2016 and 2018.
There you go.
That's close enough.
And is the co-organizer and co-curator of JewCE, the Jewish Comics Experience. Right?
Thank you.
Last but certainly not least, and actually last minute addition, but very welcome to the back panel, NC Christopher Couch. NC has a PhD in art history from Columbia University and is a senior lecturer in the Department of Comparative Literature at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He is the author of numerous books and articles, including Jerry Robinson, Ambassador of Comics. Jerry Robinson, if you didn't know, is a famed Batman artist, best known as the co-creator of Robin and the Joker. That's everybody.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Get home safe. Okay, bye.
And it's all downhill from here, really, honestly. And before we start, Gorf prepared a short video. Can we run the video, AV guys? Gorf, do you accompany this with something?
No, it should stand alone.
Okay.
Shalom, I'm Jordan B. Gorfinkel, veteran editor of the Batman franchise, bringing the B-Boss family, and especially Super Bat fan Ariel B-Boss. A very special message from San Diego Comic-Con.
Bring B-Boss home to Comic-Con.
Bring B-Boss home to Comic-Con.
Bring B-Boss
Home to Comic-Con.
Bring B-Boss
Home to Comic-Con.
Bring B-Boss home to Comic-Con. Bring B-Boss home to Comic-Con.
Bring B-Boss home to Comic-Con.
Bring B-Boss
Home to Comic-Con. Bring B-Boss. Bring B-Boss home to Comic-Con.
Bring B-Boss home to Comic-Con. We redheads gotta stick together.
Bring
Home to
Comic-Con. Hey, it's Sam J. Jones, a.k.a. Flash Gordon. I'm with my buddy Gorf. We have a very strong common sense message to the world. Bring B-Boss home.
The purpose of that video was that when I was at Comic-Con this year in San Diego, which is a little bit smaller than this one, I felt like I was a little out of place because here I was enjoying a pop culture mecca, if I may cross traditions here, and there were cousins of ours in Israel who are huge Batman fans and are stuck in a bat cave not of their own making. And I spent the last hour literally running around getting as many clips as possible to be able to create awareness around the reality that we do have people who are trapped right now and should be let free. And when we have a group of Jewish people together like this, I felt, and with Roy's permission I received, that it was, we would be bereft if we did not continue to generate awareness around the B-Boss family who dressed up, you saw the picture, as Batman on the holiday of Purim, and of course the remaining 100 or so hostages. And all I can say is hashtag bring them home now. It's very emotional. And this is the power that superheroes have to give us hope and hopefully to drive freedom. So thank you, all of you, for indulging me in this.
By the way, I'm Roy Schwartz, pop culture historian, former regular contributor for CNN, Juice Exhibit co-curator, event programming consultant, and the proud author of Is Superman Circumcised? The complete Jewish history of the world's greatest hero. And by the way, all of our works are sold outside, and we all know the authors and can get them signed. So the questions are, I have specific questions for specific people on the panel, but everybody is welcome to jump in after that and provide their own 2 cents.
Can I jump in before you even ask a question?
I guess you were doing it anyway.
I guess. Well, you could say no.
It's
and
like a
then
vaudeville shtick going on, yes.
you could say no, and I could pout. But in the video you showed, Sam Jones, I guess, is best known for The Flash, but he also played the Spirit, right? In the Spirit movie, also created by an alumnus of the same high school that Bill Finger and Bob Kane went to DeWitt Clinton in the Bronx. So that, and I'm not saying that because I run Will Eisner Week for the Will Eisner Foundation. I'm not saying that at all. Anyway, thank you for indulging me.
And aside from Will Eisner, Bob Kane, and Bill Finger, who else went to that high school?
Stanley.
Stan Lee, and yes? His daughter. wait. Phoenix, I'm about to say, what's her name? And James Baldwin, also.
And Erwin Hazen, who co-created Wildcat with Bill Finger.
Right, but not me.
But
Okay,
not,
no.
Roy, where did you go to high school?
Ironi Daled in Tel Aviv. Yeah, it's just like Dewitt Clinton, but 6,000 miles to the east. Okay. So, Athena, we'll start with you. Always start with the lady, right? Tell us a little bit about your grandfather, Bill. Did you know him well?
I did not know him at all, actually. I learned a lot about my grandfather through other people. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple years before I was born.
And what did you learn about him?
I learned some great stuff and not great stuff. I mean, he wasn't treated very well by his supposed best friend. But, you know, his contributions to pop culture and Batman, of course, but not only that, but his other bodies of work that I had no idea about, writing for TV and movies, radio, things like that.
What did he do for Batman?
I don't know, this little thing called writing and creating the mythos. He had been working with Bob Kane before Batman was a concept, and he collaborated with Bob Kane when he finally decided to bring Batman to life, and kind of helped him morph him into the character that we have now.
Now, this is a kind of sort of out of left field, given that this is Jews, but do you think any of those influences on his side, knowing the family, knowing, were affected by his Jewish background in any way?
I can't answer that, I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it's good. So we're gonna figure this out together today. We're gonna
Yes.
explore, right? Which leads us to Danny. Given that Batman was created in 1939, and this is March, so it's only 5.5 months after Kristallnacht, which just had its anniversary last night, Batman can be seen, and in fact has been argued, to be a response to fascism. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
How long do we have? Well, the superhero in general, right? If you take as the first superhero, Superman, which is that's another one of those things where there's always research and somebody's found some earlier superhero, some earlier version. But if you take Superman in 1938 and really first conceived in the earlier 30s as kind of a bright, sunny, cheerful, positive, superpowered vigilante, meting out justice as he sees fit, then, but the Superman, the optimistic, the all-American, the can-do, anything is possible, is unlimited potential in everyone, especially if you're from the planet Krypton. Batman, created by two Jewish young men from the Bronx, is in the wake of World War II about to start and the rise of fascism in Germany and Italy and the persecution is the only word of Jews in Germany and Austria and everywhere else. I mean, then you can see that subconsciously it's a darker vision. It's Gotham City, it's crime, it's rats, it's shadows, it's Batman without superpowers, but with, somehow Superman lost his whole planet, but was kind of cheerful about it. He was kind of like happy-go-lucky. Batman witnesses his parents murdered in front of him. These are all great stories of vast trauma and loss, but I think Batman is shadow, is of a world where maybe options are fewer, where the bad guys seem to be winning. This seems like an N.C. Christopher Couch kind of thing. You have studied and written about this a lot, Chris.
I don't have any thoughts about Batman and 1939 or Hitler. I have a lot of other thoughts about Batman, especially some villains, but I just never got any sense from anybody I've talked to that they were responding to that.
I mean, so including Jerry? I mean, that.
No, it never came up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me, you don't mind, do you?
Clearly, yeah.
You know, the point I make in my book, Disguised as Clark Kent, is that most of these stories were done with the opposite point of view, that they were trying to make stories that were just diverting action, adventure, entertainment. But it seems to me, and I'm not, you know, this doesn't make me any kind of genius by any means, that how could you be writing stories like that in that era without what's going on in the world influencing it somehow? So that is where.
I'll agree with that.
Okay.
So I actually want to follow up on that with you, Danny, and then I have a question for you, Gorf, is on a much more personal level, was Bruce Wayne something of a personal avatar for Kane?
Or was he an avatar for Kane or for Bill Finger, you know, or for Jerry Robinson? It's interesting that neither Superman nor Batman are blonde, right? They're superhuman, but they have blue hair, which, you know, but I think it's supposed to be black hair with highlights, right? So they're not Aryans, even though Superman, with that very name, comes from the Nietzschean concept in part. Yeah, again, I think you can't. I think just the way, you know, say Spider-Man is part Stan Lee and part Steve Ditko. You know, I was just reading my own book in preparation for this, and if any of you have read Bob Kane's memoir, which he didn't really write, but his memoir called Batman and Me, mostly written by a guy named Tom Andre, who's a brilliant and conscientious historian. There's no mention of the word Jew or Jewish in the book. There is an elaborate description of a Shabbos dinner, though. When Bob and Bill and I think Jerry, and this is one of those apocryphal stories that I trace back to Jules Pfeiffer, who'd heard it from Jerry Robinson. It's a snowstorm, and these artists and writers are huddled together in an apartment in New York. They have a deadline. They have to write and draw 5,000 pages over the weekend, and not really 5,000, but and suddenly it's Christmas weekend, and who should show up but Bob Kane's father with matzo ball soup, chicken, and like kasha varnish. I mean, it may as well be saying, hey, we're Jewish, it's Shabbos, but we don't want to. It was so weird that, and Tom Andre, as far as I know, is not someone with a background of matzo ball soup and roast chicken. So I think Kane, I think there was Jewish subtext, whether they knew it or not, if only about fighting for justice. Batman may be how Kane saw himself. I mean, Kane was a great promoter, and there's all sorts of pictures. He loved ascots, you know, and there's all sorts of photos of him kind of looking heroic and manly and surrounded by attractive women or by paintings that he didn't actually paint. You know, so I think you can't write anything without putting yourself in it. So how, you know, there probably was a certain amount of Bob Kane and Bill Finger in Batman.
Bless you. Gorf.
Roy.
You ideated the famous Batman story No Man's Land, which ran for a year.
Did you say ideate?
Ideated.
Ideated, wow.
He came up with the idea.
I know.
The verb. It ran for, 1999, I think, for a whole year in the comics, and it inspired both a season of the TV show Gotham, which, if you don't know, the young guy who plays Bruce Wayne in the show Gotham, David Mazouz, is an Orthodox Sephardic Jew. Oh. It also inspired the movie The Dark Knight Rises, and probably also elements in The Batman. And in July, when we were both on a panel at San Diego Comic-Con, you mentioned to me almost in passing, and I really was looking forward to this opportunity, circling back to this, that the idea for No Man's Land was inspired by the Maccabees? Please explain.
Oh. Batman No Man's Land was a storyline that I never imagined could possibly be filmed, much less several times. It was meant to be the spiritual successor of Batman Year One, which was created by Frank Miller, who sat in this chair 1 year ago at the first JewCE. And we sent Frank our best. So 10 years later, we wanted to do, we being the Bat Guys team of Denny O'Neil, our maestro, and Scott Peterson and Darren Vincenzo, the Bat Guys editorial team, we wanted to do a coda to the 10 years that had passed, both in real time and in Bat time. Same Bat time, same Bat channel. How many people here are fans of the 66 TV show? Yeah, give us an applause. Okay, good. So I'm feeing like the energy in this room is a little bit low right now, and I want to pick us up before we get into the... Yeah, thank you, Supergirl. Before I answer the question, Roy, so for those of you who may recall the Adam West Citizen TV show, there was a theme song to it. Can we sing that theme song? How does that go?
I remember.
Okay, that was very tuneful. Ow. Now we're going to do it again, but we're going to do the Jewish version, because it always occurred to me that Jewish songs are sung in the minor key, right? And
He's
that
a cantor.
song,
That's why he's driving you nuts. Yeah.
exactly. So that song is in the minor key, but in order to make it into a nigun, which is a Jewish melody, we have to sing it with oi, okay? So now all together, for the very first time in the history of Batman, we are going to do the 1966 Batman theme song sung as a nigun with oi. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Ay, 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 Batman. Okay, that was pretty good. Give yourselves a round of applause.
And now to the question.
Now to the question. Batman No Man's Land. I didn't even realize at the time, but I've realized subsequently, thanks to my work on Jewish graphic novels, that the story was in fact inspired by a classic biblical story. The Maccabees certainly has influenced Batman over time, as it has many properties, but in this specific situation, the story went like this. For the last 10 years in Batman history, all the villains have been overrunning Gotham City. And it's been one demolished destruction event after another. And we're at the point where the United States government says, you know what? Gotham City is so corrupt that we can't possibly let it stay in the United States anymore. So we're going to blow the bridges, we're going to cut it off from the United States and let it rot in its own sinfulness. But then a hero, a dark knight arises and says to the United States government, what if there are 50 righteous people in Gotham City? Will you rescue the city? What if there are 40? What if there are 30? What if there are 10? Anybody know where this story comes from? Just yell it out. Abraham, exactly. Abraham and Sodom and Gomorrah. So you see the story of Batman No Man's Land, in which the city of Gotham needs to be rescued and shown its better nature, comes from the Bible. So don't tell Christopher Nolan, but The Dark Knight Rises is actually a remake of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah.
One more question for Gorf, and then we'll move to you and see. So this may be a little bit out of left field. A little before you started working under Danny O'Neil, he oversaw another big storyline, A Death in the Family, which is famous for killing off the second Robin, Jason Todd. Now, in that story, the Joker tried to sell a stolen nuclear missile to Hezbollah so they can blow up Tel Aviv, and he became the Iranian ambassador to the UN, which, given the regime, is only slightly less bonkers than reality, right? Did you guys ever discuss this story? Where did this idea come from?
That's a great question that I'm going to have to look into. I don't know, but I still have the image of the Joker wearing his keffiyeh burned into my memory. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Anybody here have any insights into that storyline?
Yeah, he stands in front of the UN General Assembly and says, me and Iran share the same madness and a love of fish. And he gives this whole speech.
I love a fish.
I love a fish.
Great. I can tell you this. I know that in my tenure in the Bat Office for nearly a decade, we were very interested in verisimilitude, which means that we were very interested in taking whatever was going on in the world and reflecting it as fiction does best through metaphor to illuminate real-world situations and hopefully, again, tikkun olam, make the world a better place. One example was, gosh, I just blanked on the name of it. And there was a storyline that was based on landmines. Innocence. What was it called? Something Innocence? Ugh.
Yeah, the proceeds went to
Right.
declutter landmines. I remember
Exactly,
that, yeah.
exactly. So where there were opportunities to be able to take this entertainment and to elevate it, we took those opportunities. I'm sure at that time, I don't know if it was editorially driven by Denny or whoever was writing it at the time, whoever wrote that storyline, but I'm sure they were thinking, here's an opportunity to use Batman to really do some real world good. And we saw the video that opened this panel. That's another example of it. And I think the creation that your grandfather made, the creations, because the vast majority of them, Robin, Catwoman, and the list goes on, were created by Bill Finger, not Bob Kane, who signed everything, but it wasn't him, it was your grandfather. Those creations have gone on to be not only inspirations for us to be superheroes, but also to illuminate again and engage us in what's really going on in the world and make it a better place.
Gorf, as you probably know, someone else who debuted in 1939 was Dennis O'Neil.
That's right. And
So
in
this is
fact,
Denny O'Neil's 85th.
what is Batman's birthday?
Uh-oh, is it Denny's birthday?
I believe it's Denny's birthday, yeah.
Harvey Pekar too, but he did less Batman than those other guys.
Same sulking, though.
Yeah.
NC. So the story of how Jerry Robinson got into comics is a very Jewish story. Can you share it with us?
Do you know sometimes Jewish people would go like into the Catskills or into the Poconos
Anybody not know this?
for like vacation, right? You know, so Jerry was actually on vacation in the Poconos, and there was a fad at the time, which I've never found any like visual evidence for. There must be photographs somewhere that, you know, those white outfits that painters wear, right? So and there was this fad among like kids, high school kids. Jerry was, you know, coming out of high school to paint cartoons on white painters' clothes. So I guess it was kind of a class play thing because, you know, painters would wear these like white jackets and white pants over their clothes, and, you know, it was this perfect canvas. So Jerry had painted a bunch of cartoons on one of these painters' clothes, and he was, you know, in the Poconos at this resort, and somebody came up to him and said, "Who did the cartoons on your painter's outfit?" And Jerry said, "Well, I did." And he said, "Well, I've got this comic book I'm working on. Do you want to come work for me in New York?" And Jerry said, "Well, I can. I'm going to college in the fall, you know, at Cornell." And so he said, "Look, why don't you see if you can do something? Come to New York, work for me." So Jerry had already been admitted by Columbia College of Columbia University, my alma mater, I might mention. And so he got in touch with Columbia and said, "Look, can I still come there?" You know, and they said, "Yes, you know, come ahead." So he actually, when he left the Poconos, he got a ride with Jan Pierce, who I believe was also
Jan
Jewish.
Pierce, yes.
Yes. And ended up in New York and then started working on Batman. So just completely random Jewish networking.
Jan Pierce, whose son Larry directed Goodbye Columbus, but also directed 2 episodes of the Batman TV series.
I had no idea. Great.
It's all in the Mishpucha. Now, and so you mentioned to me that you have some wonderful stories about Jerry Robinson that you couldn't fit in the book. I think this is a great place to share those.
Yeah, I've got a couple. So when I was working with Jerry, we were like talking about how different characters were created, and one of them was how he created Robin in Batman, which he, you know, the idea came down from the editorial staff that they wanted a kid sidekick for Batman because, you know, all the superheroes had kids sidekicks. So Jerry was kind of tasked with doing this, you know, because he was the artist, right? So what he did was there's some illustrations for the Robin Hood story by an artist named N.C. Wyeth that some people might be familiar with.
Great painter.
And look, Jerry was insanely in love with American illustration. He had a magazine route when he was a kid in high school, and he learned who all the illustrators were. He could recognize everybody's work on the covers, J.C. Leyendecker, Howard Chandler Christie, all of these people. He was just a huge fan of this stuff. So he loved illustration, and when it was time to come up with this kid's sidekick, the imagery that he turned to was from NCYS Illustrations for Robin Hood. And people teased him, I guess, about this, that he named the character after himself, but no, it was actually for Robin Hood. And he was thinking about, the Robin Hood of the movies, and that's why Robin had that sense of humor. It's the kind of same thing. But another place that Jerry looked for things for characters and for the design of his work and everything, everybody knows that Batman is dipped deeply in German expressionism, that the real look of Batman. And it's so funny, whenever Batman is revived and brought back to his roots, immediately, if you're Neil Adams, you go right to German expressionism, right? And some of the antecedents of German expressionism are the decadents, the artists like Aubrey Beardsley, who were really important at the end of the 19th, the beginning of the 20th century. And Jerry had a copy, he got a copy of a book called Tales of Mystery and Imagination by Edgar Allan Poe. And the illustrations in that book are by the Irish stained glass artist and illustrator and contemporary of Aubrey Beardsley, Harry Clarke, okay? And he was absolutely riveted by that book. Actually, when he went to a wonderful high school, Trenton Central, and there was a chance to do a dramatic reading for the speech club, and so he read, an Edgar Allan Poe story out of that book. And the illustrations are absolutely stunning. Predecessors to German expressionism. If you ever get a chance to look at the Harry Clarke book, it was hugely popular. And somebody gave Jerry that book when he was I don't know, a teenager. It was for something called a bar mitzvah. Are you familiar with that? So
wait, in this case, it will be a bat mitzvah.
You bat me to it.
Anyway, Jerry still had that book, the actual book he got for his bar mitzvah. And I told him to write a note to Jens in it saying, this is one of the inspirations for the look of Batman, because he kept the book all those years. It was still in his apartment. So I guess, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, Batman. Yeah.
Now, the journalists in the audience need to find that book and use those images and put that in the article so the audience can read and compare.
Yeah.
Right? Athena. Bill is mostly known for co-creating Batman, which is, of course, a gigantic legacy. But he also created Green Lantern, the original Alan Scott. He created Wildcat, Lana Lang, and he fleshed out Superman's origin, that was him, in Superman 53, August 1948, and Superman 61, November 1949, as if you didn't know. So tell us more about his non-Batman work.
Well, like you mentioned, Green Lantern, Alan Scott. Wildcat was another one of his wonderful human characters that he enjoyed writing for, with All American Squad. Was that no, that was Justice League.
Yeah, you're talking about the All Winners?
Yeah, the All Winners, which was
Time
timely.
Link.
I'm mixing them all
Waters,
up.
yeah.
There's too many. Justice Society is what,
Justice Society.
yes, was Wildcat and Green Lantern were part of that group. He also wrote for the TV show, but he also wrote for Sunset Script. He wrote a few movies. Also, I'm trying to get him actually a star for some of the work that he did outside of comics.
I was about to get to that.
I beat you to it. What can I say? So he's most known for the Green Slime sci-fi movie from the 60s that he wrote with his best friend Charles Sinclair. I mean, he was an avid writer because he was not of wealth. So he wrote for DC up until pretty much until his death. But he also wrote for the Army. Surprisingly, you got to take the jobs when you can get them. So, I mean, he really was someone who just wanted to tell a story.
I want to circle back to this Hollywood star business. So what's that all about?
Well, if you don't know, Batman just got a star recently at the end of September. He was the first superhero to get a star on the Walk of Fame. So he is placed with, Adam West and Burt Ward and Bob Kane. And so I figured, it's time for Bill to get his star. Thank you. I do hope that we can make it happen. I have a GoFundMe right now, so I'm allowing the fans to participate in a little piece of the Batman history and get Bill a star. So you can find information about it on my Instagram, or you can go to GoFundMe and look for it there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Danny.
Yes.
Okay. The most prominent Jewish character actually explicitly Jewish character in Batman's world is Harley Quinn. According to Jim Lee, DC's publisher-in-chief creative officer, she is their most popular character after Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Harley Quinn debuted in 1992's Batman the Animated Series. Right? She was created by Paul Dini and Alan Burnett. And she was based on and voiced by Jewish comedian and actress Arlene Sorkin, who really gave her like a Borscht Belt humor, stereotypical Brooklyn kind of Flatbush accent, and peppered her dialogue with oi and plots. It's there from the very first episode. But she was only ever impliedly Jewish. They never said that she was Jewish or showed that she was Jewish. In the comics, years later, it was revealed that her father was Jewish while her mother was Italian Catholic.
It's a long question.
I know, but wait, there's more, which makes sense, But in her animated show on Max, they switched it, and her mother is Jewish and her father is Italian Catholic. They even had a Hanukkah episode. And in the movies, both with Margot Robbie and Lady Gaga, there's no hint of Jewishness. What do you think that is?
Well, my last conversation with Chris Nolan, we were talking about just that. I said, 5 million, 10 million, let's talk about real money, Chris. And he said, let's talk about Harley Quinn. I know nothing about Harley Quinn. I just want to preface that. Most of you probably know more about Harley Quinn than I do. I will say that as someone, and Gorf, you would know this too, and even in NC Couch, having been in the editor's desk at a comic book company, to declare that a particular character is any specific religion or ethnicity or background, to declare that a villain, it's a very mixed bag. I believe you can probably ask Mr. Claremont himself about it later on today, the idea, and you shall, that Marvel went so many years debating whether Magneto was or wasn't Jewish. They established he was in Auschwitz. He had a tattoo with the concentration camp number, but they would never come down, and I say that as someone who sat in the all-powerful assistant editor's chair in the X-Men office at one point. Maybe you don't want to say the greatest genocidal supervillain of all time is Jewish, because maybe that's not the most proud thing you can say about your Jewish character. So I think with Harley Quinn, maybe the same thing. Maybe there's a certain amount of ambivalence. It's like, yeah, the psychopathic killer is Jewish, yay. It doesn't, so that might be part of it. And then, of course, as you say, their continuity is constantly being rewritten. The universes of the comics and the movies and the cartoons are different. So considering that I know nothing about Harley Quinn, I think I've answered that. But I do want to add something about another topic. May I?
Please.
Okay. Because we were talking about Jerry Robinson, whose biographer is here. And I just want to give a shout out to Jerry as really the person who started popularizing the idea and the history of Jews in creating superheroes and creating comics. Jerry really, did anybody do it in a big way before Jerry? I don't think so. He had an exhibition that he curated.
Yep.
you know, Pfeiffer kind of alluded to it in the Great Comic Book Heroes, but Jerry, you know, Jerry was a wonderful artist, cartoonist, idea guy. He wrote, you know, he wrote a history of comics, starting with comic strips, and then what about a few years before he died, he thought, oh, I'll add another 40,000 words to the, I mean, Jerry was a powerhouse of ideas and really very much the forerunner of other people like me and Ari Kaplan and Simcha Weinstein and Roy Schwartz, who got into exploring the Jewish origins of superheroes. So I really think so that's another Bat connection that really made a big difference and part of why we're here today.
Wasn't Jerry Robinson also at the forefront of artists' rights and artist management?
He was a key figure in getting Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster pensions. And actually, another story that's not in the book is that one of the things he was proudest of was that in the negotiations, as they were coming down to the end of the negotiations about getting some kind of credits for Jerry and Joe on the Superman properties, Jerry was doing the last negotiations with basically Warner Brothers, and they told him that Jerry and Joe's names could not be on the Superman movie because it was all done. And Jerry said, look, I've been in Hollywood, I've done movies, you do the credits last, you can put them on the movie. And they said, okay. So they agreed that Jerry and Joe's names would be in comic books, on any kind of printed property, on any film or TV derivations, and then finally they said, but no toys. And Jerry said, okay. And he said the reason he negotiated it, the reason he fought for that so hard is because as an artist and a writer himself, he knew that, you know, even more than the money, even more than anything else, the most important thing was to get their names back on their creation. So
That's the ultimate Batman-Superman crossover. And I actually, as an editor in the Bat Office, called Jerry Robinson to ask him if he would come back and do something on Batman. And he said, honestly, that is 40 years ago in my career. I'm not interested in coming back. I have since evolved in my career, and that's how I learned about his artist management career. And that was the sum total of my, unfortunately, my work with Jerry Robinson. But he was a great and important and towering figure, along with Bill Finger, in the Batman mythos, in the comic book industry, and just plain in entertainment.
Yeah. Two quick questions, then we'll open it to the audience. This one's for you, Gorf. The new Batwoman, Kate Kane, was created by Greg Rucka, Geoff Jones, Grant Morrison, Mark Waid, and Alex Ross in the series 52, issue 11, is Jewish. She's also Bruce Wayne's maternal cousin, which inadvertently or not, makes Bruce Wayne Jewish. Please explain.
Well, see, there's something called matrilineal descent. And bottom line, I actually meant to ask Greg Rucka about this because I think he was probably the most prominent, I may be wrong in giving him this credit, but the most prominent creator of the character. He has a strong Jewish neshama, strong Jewish soul, and this was probably very important to him. I can tell you that people come up to me all the time and say that must make Batman Jewish as well, because it means that there was a Jewish mother in common between Kate Kane and Bruce Wayne. And we won't get into some more details anatomically of why we may also be aware that Bruce Wayne is Jewish.
I will.
You will? Go ahead. Feel free.
But before we get to that fun stuff, just if you guys didn't know, the comics since then have occasionally hinted that Batman is actually Jewish, especially the comics written by Tom King. You know, they talked about Martha Kane, his mother, being Jewish. He put a pebble in Alfred's grave when he died. Alfred got better at comics. There's a part where we talk about how his father was Christian, but he pointedly doesn't talk about his mother. So they've been dropping hints, but I don't think they're ever going to bring him out.
It also raises, I emailed you this question, which I'll raise right now. Who's the more Jewish character, Superman or Batman? And well, you know, round of applause. How many people think Superman is the more Jewish character? Okay, how many people think Batman is a more Jewish character? Interesting, kind of tied, wouldn't you say? I wouldn't have. What's that? That, by the way, that is one of my assistants on Jewish Graphic Novels Initiative, Sarah, who's yelling out the question right now. The answer is everything. I don't want to qualify it simply because it's a gut reaction that I'm looking for. So I will give you my answer, and that is they are both Jewish characters, but you would assume that Superman would be considered to be the more Jewish character simply because his storyline, spoiler alert, kind of mirrors the Moses storyline. It's very biblical. He was a child rocketed from Krypton, or if you're Marlon Brando, Krypton. Good, just checking to see how many people are fans of the movie here. And he was sent on a rocket ship or a basket across space or on the Nile, and so on and so forth. Very biblical. And also, as we know, Superman's origin, and I'm kind of stealing Danny's thunder here, but Superman's origin is all about him hiding a secret identity, because if you could just see that if I take my glasses off and I pull my shirt open and I have this big red S, you can see that I may be nerdy and Jewish-y on the surface, but underneath I'm really super powerful and I'm a good guy and I'm a beacon of light. And you want to pop in here?
I stole it from Pfeiffer. You can steal it from me. It's okay.
Fine,
I'm about
deal.
to say that's Danny to a T. You know?
Yeah, I'll hand it off again. And just to close the loop on this, what is Batman? I mean, Batman seems to be more of the classic Christian. What's the word I'm looking for? He's got old money. Yeah, waspy perhaps. He's got old money, and his family goes back generations in America, and they're very entrenched in the urban environment I want to say an uptown way, because you know the difference between Superman and Batman is that Superman takes place above 42nd Street in daylight, and Batman is below 42nd Street at nighttime. So. But if you think about it, who is Batman? Batman is somebody who took tragedy and morphed it into hope. Batman is Jewish guilt. I got to think about that one for a second.
Okay, so wait, well, you think about that, because there's one question that I really want to get to, and this one is open to the panel. In the comic, Batman Damned, #1, a mature reader's title written by Brian Azzarello, who was here last year with art by Lieber Hemo, published September 2018, there's a panel showing Bruce Wayne in full frontal nudity. And in that panel, it turns out that he is indeed circumcised.
He is. I own that.
So I wanted to end on a high note of culture here. It's just, you know. So what are your thoughts on
that? You know who gave him the bris? Superman's uncle, Moyo.
Thanks, folks. We'll be here all day.
Yes.
Ow.
Good heavens, I thought that would get a better response than that.
That was a good response.
That's we were all
Thank
working
you.
on our own Moyle jokes, and we're just angry that you beat us to it. What about Green Lantern being Jewish?
Well, you're going to have to...
What about Green Lantern being Jewish?
Alan Scott?
No.
Well, Hal Jordan is
Jordan?
Jewish
Hal-
in the comics,
Yeah.
canonically. They made it
Oh, I
Jewish.
didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Huh.
There's a lot of metaphor.
Who did it? Was it a powering bris, or what was it?
They just, I don't know. But I think they snipped before he became a Green Lantern. But there's a lot of Jewish metaphor baked into Green Lantern that may be a panel next time. Let's open it to the audience. Any questions, comments, discussions of Bat Schmeckles, anything?
Any
Yes.
rags, any bones, any bottles today?
Jewish characters, and I wonder what your opinions are in regard to the different ways they exemplify good deeds. You have Superman, who basically takes off the mask of being human to do good deeds, versus Batman, who puts on a mask to do good deeds. So how do you think those, sorry.
Right, that's okay. That's exactly the point that I was driving at, which is Batman is a self-made man. In a very Jewish way, he has trained himself to be an amazing detective, to be a remarkably astute thinker. Yes, he must use physicality when he needs to, and unfortunately that's a lot, but ultimately he wants to be the Dark Knight detective, and he wants to use his intellect and scholarship to solve problems and make the world a better place. And for me, that's very emblematic of the kind of Jewish state, metaphorically and literally, that we want to live in today. Somebody else?
I would say there's the Bible and the Talmud talk a lot about tzedek and rachamim, justice and compassion. And there's a lot of Talmudic parsement and discussion about how to balance those things. So I think they really mirror those two kind of concepts, the punishment and the help, the justice and the compassion. I think there's maybe something there. Maybe. Other questions? Yes.
Athena, how old were you when you first learned of your bad lineage?
I like bad lineage. I like that. Bad lineage, yeah, I like it.
I don't remember a time that I didn't know about it. I mean, my father wanted to really make sure that I understood the importance of what his father did. So he would talk about it when he was with us. He would, share stories, physical copies of Batman stories. So, I mean, it's something that's always been part of my life.
Do you know where the name Finger comes from?
I think that's
I don't think we're
Finger, Fingeroth.
I don't think we're related.
By the way, I was thinking of that as I said that. I was thinking
But you
of
never
that.
know.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious. Do you know where your family comes from originally, way back when in the old country?
I don't know because I've been told so many different stories.
Okay. All
No,
right.
I've been told that I think it was my grandmother's side is from the Persian area, from Prussia, old Germany, Poland area. So I think Bill's family also came from that area.
So your history is just like a good comic book story, or like a good Joker origin story. We don't know exactly which story is true, but they're all entertaining.
Finger might have been Feinberg.
It happens on
Yeah.
my mother's side too. Apparently, I had a Native American me that I don't have, so I don't know.
Cool.
But maybe we are related. I don't
Maybe
know.
we are. We are though. We're all related in one way or another.
Other questions? Yes. Sorry. Okay, I'll get to you and then you. Yes. Sorry.
What were Bill Finger's and Bob Kane's reactions to the different versions, whether it was a serial from 1940s or the television or the movie that came later? What were their reactions to them? Were they happy with it? Were they not happy with it? Were they involved in it?
Well, Bob Kane was probably, where's my check?
And Bill was like, "Where's my next writing job?"
Yeah, more than that, I don't know that I specifically know. I mean, you can see a lot of press pictures from back then where they show up on the set, or Bob Kane at least shows up on the set and is glad-handing and...
In an ascot.
Yeah, with an ascot, exactly. Yeah. Well, let me ask all of you, of the movies and television shows and all of that, which storyline do you think was the most Jewish in the movies that reflected what you think is the Jewish aspect of the character? Any ideas? So I'll call it out. There's the Batman TV show. Was it Jewish to you at all? Wasn't to me. Okay, so then what do you have next? You have the 89 Michael Keaton Batman. Anything Jewish about that?
I would say Batman Returns, and it's not necessarily a good thing. If you remember the different origin they gave the Penguin in that movie, he's a baby so ugly, they put him in a basket and they send him down the river.
Yeah.
And when he grows up, he wants to kill all the firstborns of Gotham.
Yeah.
That's
By
like
the way,
a
that's
Moses thing going on there,
Yeah,
right?
that whole thing was very problematic.
Yeah, very and he loves herring and he has a big nose. It's like it's not a good scene,
right.
right?
Right, and the villain is Max Schreck.
Max Shrek, which is vaguely
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
One of the ladies somewhere there has a question. Yeah.
More of just, I guess it's a question. This is sort of just like, I guess, an examination of the flip side of what we've been saying, or like the positive Jewish aspects of Batman. Because on the other hand, like, in terms of Jewish stereotypes, this was one character, like I was happy Hal Jordan was Jewish, I'm happy when characters are Jewish most of the time, but Batman was one character where I was kind of like, oh, I don't think I need him to be literally Jewish. I'm okay with it being a metaphor. Because, like, he's a billionaire whose scheming isn't quite the right word, but he's always like 10 steps ahead and knows everybody's moves and is surveilling and is kind of running things from the shadows. It's just, when you found out that he was literally Jewish in the comics, even if they're never going to acknowledge it explicitly, did it, for any of you, like, hit you in a weird, uncomfortable way, or was it, or no?
Can I, you know, I'm going to seemingly avoid your question, but actually answer it, I think. Because it goes back to that intention thing, that thing about, is it good that Magneto is Jewish, canonically, so to speak. I was the editor of a character called Moon Knight, who some might say was a homage to Batman that Marvel put out in the 70s, and he was established as Jewish, and the creators, who one was Jewish, Don Perlin, and Doug Mensch, who's not Jewish but is a Mensch. I do not believe the creators had a single prejudice bone in their body, and their intention was to make a really cool character Jewish. It just happened that in one of his multiple secret identities, he was a mercenary who would do anything for money. Well, I found myself the editor of that comic, and it was a little bit of an ethical morass. And so I instituted a storyline about Mark Spector going on trial for crimes committed, just to sort of try to adjudicate, pardon the expression, what the story was of this character. But I think it's always good intentions. It's never the idea, let's make this character Jewish or whatever to cast you know, a negative shadow on the entire group of people he's associated with. I just think there's these good intentions that kind of go awry. So I think, you know, I mean, you know, you can read, the great thing about anti-Semitism is you can make anything anti-Semitic, you know, and people do. So there's no such thing as, oh, if we do this, it'll be hate-proof, it'll be prejudice-proof. It's just the world. So I mean, I think the intentions are always good, and then people make of it what they will.
But this wasn't a character created initially to be Jewish. This is something that came later, it seems almost by accident, by association with the character Kate Kane.
Yes.
Yeah. But I tend to agree. I want Batman to be waspy. I kind of like that. It fits.
Yeah.
I will point about Moon Knight. Forget about mercenary. He's a Jew who works for an ancient Egyptian god.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
Like, what have we
It's
done in the past
wild.
4,000 years? You know, back full circle.
Yeah, it's true. I can tell you, this is a story that I've said fairly often. When I was working on the Batman titles, this wasn't a book that I was working on Detective Comics, but I saw that you had Nightwing, Robin the Boy Wonder grown up, Dick Grayson, hanging out with Tim Drake, the newest Robin on the block, and they were ordering a pizza to the Batcave. Now, never mind, I don't know how you put the GPS in or the Uber Eats order to the Batcave and get the pizza delivered, but putting that aside for the moment, they were ordering a pepperoni pizza. And apropos to what Danny was talking about, I objected to that. And the reason I objected to it was these characters are meant to be aspirational. We want everybody to be able to relate to them, and I felt like there are people out there who may eat kosher or halal, or they're vegetarian or they're vegan, and they would not want to eat a pepperoni pizza that mixes milk and meat. So in fact, we ended up changing that, and Denny O'Neil even said later on that logically, Batman would be a vegetarian, because that would be where his personal ethos would be, and likewise, that would be the most healthy thing for a Dark Knight, the healthiest diet for a Dark Knight.
I just imagine his pouches in his belt are full of like power bars, and he just, as he jumps the roofs.
So you must have loved that movie Between the Temples. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, you'll love that. If anybody's seen that, there's an interesting milk and meat scene.
Aha.
It's, well, that's another panel, but
Right.
you and I are the audience.
That's fine. That's
No.
the Kosher Movies panel that will
Yes.
take place
Juice
later on.
2025.
Right.
Right. That concludes our panel. If you want to just chat with us, we'll be around. We'll be signing our books outside. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for
Thank you,
coming.
Roy.
Thank you.